meeting to order, and Ron, if you would do the roll call.
Okay. Chris Daddy,
Here.
Rich Gussenberg,
Here.
Chuck Neff,
Here.
Dennis Ryu,
Yep.
Megan Rockwell,
Here.
Greg Rosenblatt,
Here.
Jeff Solon,
Here.
Sarah Stevens Morley,
She's
Here.
yep. Sean Kimball,
He's not.
Vin Messiaen,
Other staff, Vin is here.
other staff.
Jeff D'Onofrio's across the hall, he'll be coming in, he's in a meeting right now.
All right. Should I read the names of these gentlemen?
Yeah, maybe we'll go around the corner, we'll have them all introduce themselves.
Oh, okay.
And that way you can get the names, but we can all
Yeah,
have,
they gave them to me, but
yeah, everyone can
Okay.
put faces to names and all that sort of thing. Jeff, do you
Sure.
want to start?
Jeff Wazinski, Principal of Tecton Architects.
Justin Hopkins, Associate Principal and Project Manager for Tecton Architects.
Will Walter, Alfred Benish and Company.
Ernest Napomsino, Senior Designer with Tecton.
Walter Gaskey, Concerned Cheshire Citizen.
Francisco Jerez, Cola Runnin, Project Manager and Senior Associate.
John O'Connell, Cola Warren, I'll be the electrical engineer on the project.
Paul Sheehan, Michael Horton Associates, structural engineer, also a Cheshire resident too.
Okay. Is that everything? Yeah. No, I wasn't anticipating the whole gang. I thought we would probably have, 2 or 3 people, but welcome aboard, all of you. We always start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, approval of meeting minutes, March 9th, 2003, 2020. Make a motion?
Yeah, I'll
Chris,
second.
seconded. Any discussion?
There's a reference to the communications subcommittee, and it has to be struck, it should just be communications.
Communications rather than communications
Right.
subcommittee.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. And all those in favor of the approving the minutes as amended? March 16th? Minutes, March 16th. Motion to approve. Second. Chris,
Greg.
any discussion?
Yes, Dennis would want to.
Oh, well, that was probably my, although I don't know. Sarah did notes and then I took them and turned them into minutes.
ways, so.
I thought I had grabbed all those, but I may not have. Yes, so Dennis should just want to, anything else? That's approved by everyone. All those in favor? And unanimous.
Aye.
Okay. We have no invoices today, so that's not a problem. Chairman's report, the only thing I wanted to do is to make sure we have people who are, yes?
Did you skip public comment correspondence?
I did. I went right over top of that. So Sarah, can she hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sarah, do we have any
Yep.
correspondence?
No, we do not have any correspondence.
All right, thank you. And any public comments? We have no one from the public.
Yeah, we had one.
We
Yeah.
did? Okay. Any comments from the public? We do not. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I want better. We need people to check references for our owners rep candidates that are coming in. So I'm looking for 3 volunteers to do some calling or reference checks. Do you have any particular company?
I don't care.
And Dennis? So let's just, you want to do Colliers?
Okay.
All right. Morganti? Okay. And what's the third one? It's Arcadis. All right. So So Megan is going to check references on Collier. Jeff is going to do Arcadis, and Dennis Montana. Correct? What? We want them for the day that we do the interviews. So, same process as we used last time. We go into executive session, we will have presentation and question and answer. And then between sessions, we'll report out anything that we learned from the reference checks. Along the same lines, Chuck, we have to, let's see,
One the same form as before, as far as how to, Google form, as far as how to rank them. We had 3 categories that we talked about last time.
okay, so we're all set there. And what about, we've got our CM?
I mean, I think this might be the same as we did in the owners rep as far as go through.
We have 5.
Yeah, I mean, we can only do up to 4. We can just each individually rank them. I don't know how you go rating system on necessarily.
Will that work for everyone?
The same way we did it for the.
The owners rep.
For the owners
Yeah,
rep, we
just a
would
voice vote.
Yeah,
rank-
just loosely
rank them
rank
each.
them. We come in, we
1 to
discuss it.
5, we discuss it, and then vote. Does that work for everyone on this? That'll get us down to 1 to 4. CM at risk, and
Then
then
the process for actually selecting one is more detailed. That's what Jeff said.
yeah, that's where he's much more careful to make sure that we've got detailed evaluations. Okay, sounds good. Then, if that's the case, I am turning it over to another Jeff. We have too many Jeffs here. I did forward out to everyone
Okay.
the forms that you had sent today.
And I brought.
But I don't know if they had a chance to look at it because it was fairly
Yeah,
late.
no problem. I'll walk you through. So we've prepared an agenda that's working its way around the table, that we just wanted some touch points to kind of cue up our team, our project, and our process. This handout here is a team contact list, so it'll be basically, we started with our architectural team, site civil, mechanical, structural, cost estimator, and food service. The primary points of contact are still just as the day-to-day project manager on the principal in charge. So that's kind of, if you need something, you go directly to us. But I think this is always helpful to have as a matter of record. So the agenda that I handed out basically just talks about team introductions and roles, and we already introduced ourselves. I asked the extended team to come tonight just so that we can meet them. I don't anticipate them coming to every meeting. I think as we move along, we're going to help shape what we want to talk about at each meeting, so then we'll bring the appropriate parties to kind of streamline that process. But agenda item number 2 on our list is we just wanted to have a quick discussion about communication protocol in meetings to make sure we get it straight and there's no missteps. From the building committee side, how we interface with the school district, is it okay to direct it, is it the superintendent that we can reach out directly? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page so that there's no missteps. So if you could speak to what you would like to see, and then we can certainly offer, what we've seen in the past.
I think, the committee wants to be in the loop
Sure.
at all times. I think that they want a lot of things to be going on that they're aware of, or that they hear only after the fact. Clearly, as we start moving down the line, we're going to be setting up meetings with staff people, trying to go directly through Jeff on that sort of thing.
Yep.
If there are meetings you're going to do with people from the town, Park and Rec or whatever, we go through Sean on that, since both of them are members of the committee. I would like to be CC'd on any emails that are going back and forth, and I don't try to bury the committee and copies of everything, but I do try to get information out to them so there's no big surprises. Other than that, as soon as we work our way through the process, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Is there a more that you'd like from me?
No, I think that's good. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What days do your agendas typically post?
I try to get them out the week before the meeting, so our meetings are the second and fourth Thursday of every month. I try to get the agenda out the Friday before that. So there's about 5-6 days ahead of time. Once in a while, it's possible it could be a special meeting where, and we've had a number of special meetings.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we'll get more into a regular,
You guys
every
can
other
go
week
over them
process
pretty quickly.
soon. But we've been meeting almost every Thursday at this point. So some of the special meeting agendas will come out a little bit shorter, but whenever possible. And, any invoices or anything like that, I always ask to have a week before so that it can be included with the agenda. That one, anything that comes in last minute, we can help with.
And that would extend any material or anything that we plan on presenting. Sometimes, we may have more new information that arises from the Friday to the Thursday. But for instance, agenda items that we may need a formal approval on, we would certainly shoot to make sure that those are part of the agenda.
We would like to be able to have that information electronically. Jeff usually puts them, we have a Google Doc where everything is located, and if we can, have the agenda with a link directly to those documents on Google Doc. Sometimes I just do them as an attachment on the same email as the agenda. But, it's not a hard and fast rule either. Things are ongoing, and we've got some documentation that comes out a day or two before the meeting, and you want to share it, that's
Sure.
fine also. But if it's something you want the committee to act on, they need time to be able to look it over and be able to, give
Makes sense.
an informed decision.
Yep. Yeah, we'll strive to, put together, what we typically do is put together kind of an update worksheet so that Friday before we can just say the activities that happened over the last couple weeks so that and then we'll present those materials as we move through.
Let me stop for a second. I'm doing all the talking here. Committee members, is there anything that you wanted to jump in with?
To get us out of points.
Okay. All right. Feel free to jump in.
Okay, great, so that's a good start, and if we need adjustment as we move along, just let us know.
Right. It'll develop.
Yep. So the interface, so we already talked about the interface with the committee. I have a draft schedule that will probably make a little more sense. I think what I'd like to do is hand that out, and then I'll hand out the guides for the workshops, and then kind of explain the process a little bit more. Because what I tried to do on this is, and I know I sent it out earlier this afternoon, but this schedule that is circulating around is really just focused in on the design phase. So it's basically schematic design development, and construction document. So it's a micro schedule looking at our work in particular. And what kind of is next on our agenda is there's what we found to be successful, and this is just consider this a draft idea, is to set up basically bi-weekly meetings at a regular time for the school district to meet with, whether it be virtual or in person, it really doesn't matter. We found with educators, virtual seems to be great because they're at various different locations, but we can adjust that. But, so we've identified basically a series of about a dozen kind of working sessions that have a rhythm of every other week. And that really is our process to ascertain all of the program. It starts with program. So the handout, hopefully everybody has by now, is this one here. Right? It's titled Guide for Working Group Meetings. And it gives, so each number, meeting with liaisons would be our first meeting, right? In the month, coming up right here, whenever we can get these scheduled. And, for instance, what we want to have at that meeting is the appropriate people to talk about, who needs to be involved in this process and when they need to be involved in it. that it's really kind of setting the table from the district side, just to make sure that we understand, you know, how much or how little, you know, do we need to talk to, you know, are the representatives that will, that we can speak to on all these various different program elements. So I aligned under Cheshire Public Schools the program to obviously your ed spec, so that it contains basically all the major topics that we need to hit. And then under Town of Cheshire, we typically, and we can certainly add to this, but if there's representatives that we need to speak to, and you'll see that in my schedule here, or our schedule from Park and Recs, Transportation, Police, Fire, Health, those kinds of things. So we want to make sure we outline. What I'm trying to do is to give you an outline of the entire design process so that you can see when people are participating and who's participating. So
Next to BOE, what is BOS?
well, it's town council really, not board of selectmen.
Oh, okay, let's be
And
Board of Finance.
Board of Finance.
That one I figured.
Yeah, that should,
Yeah, we have a town council.
Just TC.
I should have changed that, yeah. Like that spells for. So, as you look at this detail, and we can, if you'd like, I can walk you through it, but, you tell me how much or little you wanna do at this point.
I think Jeff may want to jump in, there's a lot of meetings here that do this staff. So.
Yeah, I don't know that, you know, you're talking about an individual meeting for each one of these bullet places.
No.
So it's really only, you know, one meeting that with a lot of folks, or we could kind of break it into two smaller groups that might be a little bit more manageable. You know, to do an hour back to back with two separate groups or something. With a few key staff that would be, you know, consistent in both meetings. That would seem to make sense.
Yep.
How much detail will you go into in these meetings? In other words, when you sit down with a group of classroom teachers, are you going to be talking about the layout of the rooms, the storage, the kind of
Right.
whiteboards, you know, are you getting to that level, or are you talking? much more
Eventually.
general?
Eventually,
Yeah.
Eventually.
You start out here and talk about the adjacencies of spaces next to each other. So you start out in just a typical space planning exercise. As we get further into design, then we start to validate some of storage requirements, IT infrastructure, classroom pedagogy, you know, how the teachers are teaching in the classroom, what flexibility they're looking for. Eventually, we'll get right down to having to wake people up in the meeting, but we'll be so detailed.
Well, they will stay awake, I
I'm
can
sure.
assure you. I did one of these a few years ago, I had an advisory committee, and I mean, they had, you know, very emotional meetings over what color carpet they were gonna have, or you know, things like that.
Definitely happens,
This is their world.
So the intent, so schematic design is kind of high level, big picture. Design development is when we really dig into the details and talk about where outreach should be, where marketable should be, how much, how little. And then construction documents is kind of like the heads down. So this orange piece on your schedule here corresponds to the numbers on this sheet, right? So in the month of April, if we could have a couple sessions with the district to have a visioning session, right? And that process is outlined here. Talk about who really needs to be involved in this entire process. And then the second meeting in that month is a visioning session to kind of set the table for the design. Now,
I was gonna ask Jeff, we know that, you know, we've got staff from Norton and Chapman and Darcy that are involved. Are you thinking of also including staff members from the other elementary schools, or?
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, a cross-section from all the buildings. And do you want separate meetings for each of the new buildings, or do you want them to really have one common consensus about what classroom should be versus what session should be?
Yeah, I think the closer we get to standardized, the better. You know, in terms of people in the community comparing the two buildings, each exterior will have its own look and feel, obviously, that's consistent with the community, the neighborhood that the school's in, but when you go inside, I would anticipate it to be as close to identical as we can with respect to like nurses, station looks like this in both buildings. The classroom is generally this size with the same bathroom set up in each building.
So if we're looking at something like media center, you potentially could have the media specialists from each of the 4 schools
Sure.
sitting down together, talking about
Absolutely.
what are the components that we need to see in the media center.
Yep. Absolutely, and when you look at your schedule, bullet 10, there's 2 10s and there's 2 sessions. So when you go to this chart, that's exactly what you just described. Is so session 1, we talk about in detail. We talk about, because we're there, right? We know where the rooms are. We know where everything's going to be. We want to drill down into the rooms, talk about the classrooms themselves. We want to go through special education. We want to go through admin nurse. Is that group the right group to get together for that section? We have to talk and coordinate that. And then session 2, we go through methodically and talk about food service, cafeteria, media center, gym. So we feel like an hour and a half, 2 hours is as much as we can grab in a day to get information and still have people's attention. And it seems that rhythm seems to work pretty well. And the other piece is if we do them virtually, if there's interest from the building committee to like listen in, we've had other clients do that. So if like there's one labeled sustainable strategies or site, I think we have some civil engineers, if they wanna listen in on that, sometimes if that's okay with this group, they can do that as well. So,
I was just about to ask that, because I think members of the committee are very interested in that design phase of the summits. And we want to, whether it's virtual or going somewhere, I think, either way, I'd like to make it available
Sure.
to members of the committee.
So, go ahead.
If we have more than 4 of us there, is that a meeting though?
It has to become a meeting at that point, so yeah, that's a good point. So if we have,
If you're attending, if you're there observing though, you could show up.
I thought any time you had more than 4 people in the room.
Or are you having any discussion?
You're not having discussion about the work. You can go and observe what's happening without noticing that as a meeting. If you went to the football game on Friday altogether, that's not a meeting.
Well, that's a
Just
chance
you're all
social
there.
gathering, as long as you're not talking business.
Yeah.
If you're just observing and you're not participating in the discussions, it's okay. If you're gonna participate in the discussions, you're doing agency business at that point, it's a meeting.
Then I would need to know. So I
you
guess
just have to stay muted.
Yeah, well, or as we did with the site visits, originally we weren't gonna post those, we had a lot of site visits where we had more than 4 people. It doesn't take me very much to just post it as a meeting, a special meeting. So the only thing is I would need to know.
The issue there, Rich, is it's open to the public. Not that we're trying to hide anything, but we also have to facilitate this work. If, the difference in going to a visit of a school, and yeah, that was open to the public too. You're there, you are there as the group discussing the work of the committee. If Tecton is facilitating a meeting about what do we think, something should look like, a classroom should look like or something, they're not there to solicit the feedback of the building committee. That's a working meeting of Tecton and Board of Ed folks. It's not necessarily public. I mean, all that work will be shared publicly, but it's a workshop, if you will. And so, there's costs and benefits to posting these as meetings. I don't know how many people would show up, but we also can't have, if these guys are trying to solicit the team for feedback, there'll be a place for community feedback, and that isn't it. So I'm just sensitive to that too, I think, and it could be, we don't need to make a decision tonight on every meeting that we have moving forward, but I think it's important to be cognizant of the different challenges and benefits to posting them and having folks at the meetings.
I think, you know, we have a number of people around the table who are working anyway. I don't know.
Right, yeah.
Most of these are gonna take place on the day.
Right.
I could think of, you know, two things. One is we either say, if you're going to attend any of these meetings, you're doing it just as an observer. Or secondly, if you are interested in going to one of these meetings, you have to let us know, and the first four who say that they're interested can go, and after that, you know, we can't.
I don't think you could do that.
First three.
You can't tell me that I can't go to a meeting, that's.
Three. And it wouldn't be a public meeting now. It wouldn't be a public posted meeting.
Right.
But, you know, we can figure it out as we move through the process, but, you know, there are costs and benefits to both sides.
I think you just don't get involved in the meeting, it's all,
Right.
it's just an information meeting.
You know, it's-
Okay, you can limit the people that can attend, I don't think that's right at all.
So,
Right.
if I may, we typically provide all material that we go over on these, in these working meetings to, as updates. We'll typically have a slide deck that facilitates the conversation, and that would typically become part of our update to you as a body at either likely the next meeting. So you, as a committee, will still have the opportunity to weigh in on the material that we're discussing in the working setting. So we just don't want you to feel like you're being left, you
Yeah.
don't have the opportunity to review material that's being presented. There will be some times where program questions come up that we may need to discuss as, with the committee. But typically, those working sessions are where we kind of suss out any issues with, that the faculty brings up regarding sizes of spaces, you know, any logistical challenges, transportation, parking, that type of stuff. We think of us as the filter to this committee for, you know, design challenges or project challenges.
So do we have an agreement then that unless it's some special need, we go there strictly as observers? And
Yeah.
we watch the meeting, we can come back, we can discuss it in this format if we have any questions or issues. Okay?
Can I ask you a question? Sure. It's on a new topic. Okay. Up until right now, my role or our role as the committee has been pretty clear. And even moving forward with some of our other selections and digging in, where do we fit in with this? Or is this the part where we kind of step out of the driver's seat a little bit and trust you guys to drive and I just fill the seat? Is that pretty much?
Yeah, typically, yeah, we're sharing kind of a window into what we would propose the process to be. And our job is to bring, as Justin mentioned, that information that we collected, our opinion of it, and where we're headed, back to you folks, in an abbreviated way, so that you can say, right track, wrong track, kind of discussions. And I'm certainly, you know, as we have those conversations during those updates, if there's things that we need to fully vet, then we will.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. So if I just give you an example, if you meet with a group of people and they very strongly recommend certain things that you know are going to be fairly expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Before you would say, let's go ahead and do that, you might come back to us and say, this isn't really what, you know, normally budgeted, do you want to move in that direction or not?
Absolutely. Any change of scope, schedule, budget would come back to this body. I think the benefit is that we have an educational spec as a kind of a backstop to kind of set the table for those conversations. So we're really after kind of here's the space that was identified. How would you like to use it? You know, how the look and feel, the shape, what needs to be next to what, those kinds of conversations. But if they go sideways and there's questions on, and we've had this where we'd like to change, you know, modify the ed spec a little bit, we would bring it back to this group to have a conversation. Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Can I ask you guys a question? On the room-by-room assessments,
Sure.
where you have the sessions broken out, 1, 2, 3, 4, is there any strategic kind of magic to why those groups are together? And really, my question is, like, when you talk about food service and cafeteria, my facilities director, he could be part of discussion, right?
No, I mean, I would consider this a draft. Sometimes food service is in-house, sometimes it's outsourced. Sometimes one person handles transportation, food service, and operations altogether. So I think the dialogue on what groups make sense to group together is, yeah, that's still, if you have suggestions.
We are in-house.
Sure. Yep, yep. So, kind of the takeaway, well, let me just quickly walk you through the sessions. So we talked about this, meeting one is really just setting the table with the district to understand that process. Two is big picture visioning. You know, as we move along in schematic design, we want to obviously review initial concepts, you know, adjacencies within these working sessions. There's other topics like sustainable strategies that we want to touch upon early on, right? So we're trying to tackle all the major topics early on in schematic design, site improvements, safety, security, building systems and lighting, and then interior design, which is finishes and like. So we want to try to get through those conversations early, and then to kind of set the framework for the schematic design set, and then those individual sessions, those room by room assessments, typically happen in design development after you know where the space is and how big it is. Then we go into the room and talk about, all right, what do you want in that room? So this process has kind of served us well. And what we've tried to do, if you focus back on this schedule, is I tried to, when we start at the top, I put in when your owner's project manager likely would be on board and your CMR would likely be on board. And there's meetings with the state. There's a prep meeting, SDR meeting, a DDR meeting, and a PCR meeting. You kind of want to have that meeting once you have your OPM on board. So I'm trying to overlap those. So a little bit of that, that kind of coordination has to happen early on, because do we know who the project manager is from the state? Have they assigned one?
I don't think so.
Okay. So that we can also do some due diligence on, right? The reason why I bring this up is because sometimes, like right now, it's hard to get a meeting, so we want to ask them early, and even in fact just try to plug in some placeholders with them so that we don't lose their focus.
I think, who came out? Barbara came out, right? To meet us at the site.
Barbara Fabiani?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know that she's assigned.
Yeah, we should probably ask the director, Doug, what, or either we can ask her, you can add whatever is comfortable, but.
We're happy to do that.
Yep. Okay.
We're in communication with most of them on a weekly basis.
All right, if you have that regular communication, if you want to ask them.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the schedule, where it says OPM is April 13th, that's the projected date that this committee would recommend an OPM to the town council.
Yeah.
The town council would not yet have approved somebody.
Okay.
And once they approve it, then it has to go to town manager. So we probably have a couple weeks of that.
No,
They would
that's
attend.
really quick. They have
Yeah,
they have the contract, when they get the RFP, they have a copy of the contract, and it was turned around in,
Yeah.
5 days, something like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
quick. So, but I'm not certain when the town council will approve it, because we're going to miss their regular meeting on the 11th. So it would be either setting up another meeting or
Okay.
to a subsequent.
The prep meeting isn't so critical. I mean, it's kind of an introductory meeting, and we give them, who from team members you have on board. It's the SDR meeting that we need to have our kind of act together.
We're moving as fast as we can.
So underneath the S is schematic design. So Will's over there. We have copies of our contract. My presumption is that you own the vacant parcel already. So if there can be, we'll need to coordinate, but if we can start in on site survey and due diligence, that would be great. We can
Yeah.
coordinate offline, who would be out there, how long, and those kinds of things, but, what we're trying to do is to get started. It's about 10 days, how many days?
10 days of field work per site. We're ready to mobilize next week.
Great.
So no problem on the north side, no one's there, but on the
Yeah.
Norton, we'll have to,
Coordinate that.
obviously coordinate, but is
Yeah,
there
sure.
any issue when kids are in school as long as we check in and?
No, not necessarily. I mean, they know that this is gonna be the beginning of the process. So,
When's your April break?
it's the second week.
I think it's April
From
10th,
Good
Monday.
Friday through the following week?
Yeah, it's the Monday after Easter is when it starts.
Right.
Yeah, it's the 10th through the 15th.
Okay. So we'll begin coordinating through the superintendent's office to make sure that, but what we want to try to do is get a good survey, understand where wetlands are, if any, early in schematic design so that we can make informed decisions about the site plan. So,
Where it says site environmental by owner, what is that? What's the scope of that?
so I have to go back through, I know you did geotechnical.
Right.
I don't know, and I think you did in phase 1, right?
Yeah.
I just have to reread that, if there was anything that was recommended for exploratory work, or if it was is it an ND?
I know we have a little
being-
turtle thing going on
Yeah.
on the north end.
So there's a little more due diligence for us to understand what that actually means. I wanted to put it on there to promote the conversation about it.
Okay.
So when you start digging in on the due diligence side, we just need to
Sure, we can
see
connect
if
on
there's
that.
any issues or
Okay.
concerns there. So that's why I put it there. We would likely, so under the design, under schematic design, below that, there's like an estimate review, but just below that in the blue box is the geotechnical, traffic, and then building environment in geotest wells. So I put the geotechnical boring stuff on the kind of the tail end of the SD because we want to know where we're putting these buildings first. Right? And then we'll do those borings. So somewhere in that range, we'll do it. It seems like a good time to do it because it's June, July.
Do you think traffic should be a little bit?
We do
Traffic-
have one traffic study completed. There's already been
If we
one.
can get a copy of that, that'd be great, but
Yeah.
we want to do it, obviously not during spring break. And
Yeah,
obviously we want to do it, before school gets out in the summer, so
right.
we will definitely get that done before, at least the traffic count's done before school is out.
Yeah, because right now you have it in June.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we can take a look at what's already been done, that would be certainly helpful.
Okay.
That's a good question. Do you want to literally start Monday with some of the site survey work?
I believe we actually could. Yeah, I told my guy to get it on the schedule. 'Cause I know this is a fast track project, so.
And is starting at Norton okay? Does it matter where you start? Do you have a preference?
Probably want to start at Norton because I don't want to get out to do North End until the wetlands are
I was gonna
delineated.
say,
And that's a little bit,
pretty.
my wetlands guy's a little further out.
You could just shoot me an email, shoot Jeff and I an email with who wants to go. We'll give the principal a heads up, we'll let our facilities director know. I mean,
Sure,
we'll accommodate whatever you need.
great.
I think we have.
We should get you a contact list too.
I think we included the committee members in the back in this.
Hold on.
I don't have. We'll add you to the ordinance. So, let's just, if it's okay, we'll finish walking through kind of the schedule, because I think it outlines the process pretty well. So we'll do some initial outreach towards kind of the tail end of schematic design, or maybe even earlier, to land use, building, zoning, those kinds of things, just to touch base to understand, our interpretation of the regulations is correct. Building height, coverage, those kinds of things. So all of that due diligence the site due diligence happens early, and then most of the investigation will happen all under schematic design. And then we'll have our SDR meeting. We'd likely, you know, when you talk about unexpected, action, we would like to, towards the tail end of schematic design, have some form of approval from this group saying, okay, yep, let's move into design development. That typically happens, and it will have to happen under the construction documents for OSCP and RDO. But, so that would be schematic design. If you go all the way down to the purple box, what we're trying to do is maybe halfway through-ish schematic design is to have community outreach, and I know we talked about, do we have one, do we have two, how do we handle it? We can handle it any way you want, but I think the appropriate, we found through our experience, the appropriate time is kind of when we have enough to present, and we have it vetted enough. So that gets a little tricky because it's in June, so everybody's on vacation, so we'll head out to, I don't know, the shore or something and do a presentation, but, so we can talk about dates and forums and platforms, whatever. Is it virtual, is it hybrid, is it in person?
Jeff, I would assume you would rather have two different meetings because the communities are so different.
Right, for the two different
If you're doing
stakeholder
a
groups in
community,
the community.
you do one for the,
Yeah.
the community.
Certainly I'll be messaging our parents and stakeholders about the idea that we do want to keep them fairly similar. And then, you know, so they'll walk in, I'm thinking it's like carte blanche, we're gonna,
Sure.
I want the bathroom to look this way, but, you know, certainly the exterior traffic flow, things like that, are gonna be field layout, everything like that.
No,
So this is 6 meetings then, right? This would actually become 6 workshops, right?
Yeah, right.
you have on your town council board of their board.
I put that there, we should be doing periodic updates.
I had one member of planning and zoning ask me when we were coming to that. When, oh, is that okay?
It's, yep, it's land use, local permitting.
Okay.
This typically happens during design development because the site civil drawings typically are, 80–90% along, so that is going to do all the drainage calcs and all that.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, we
Wanna speak
typically,
to that?
we typically make our application for wetlands at about 75% DD, and our site plan is shortly after that.
So 5 months from you want to have a presentation of the fall festival?
Be nice if we could get it.
I don't know if you know what the fall
It's-
festival
in
is.
September, there's a really big community. It's probably gonna be a little bit different this year than it is in typical years, given the work at Parkland Park. So I know the site has been shifted. It's still gonna be at Parkland, but all the way to the north end of the
Community
property.
groups who are gonna they set up
Tents and
tents
it's
and
like
food, and there's, the band comes
Music
down and
and-
plays.
On the Board of
Typical
Ed.
for a lot of small,
Yeah.
small
Yeah.
towns.
Yeah, we have a tent.
Yeah, the Board of Ed has a tent, so it would be nice if we had something that we could begin to show. And I don't know whether we'd be at a point where we might have a couple models or something by that point.
When is that again?
No,
That's
in September.
September.
Yeah, it's the fall fairs kind of thing. Yeah, we have a Suffield on the green, and same thing.
Yeah, a lot of towns have
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, and it's always in the falls.
Sure, sure. Okay.
We'll
Keep
get a
talking,
date.
I'll give you the
We'll get a
date, I know I have it somewhere.
Yep, okay, we'll put that on there. I'm sorry, you were mentioning, town council, board of ed.
No, I was asking about the planning
Yeah.
and zoning, only
Yeah,
because
okay.
a member of that group had asked me
Gotcha.
when we might be coming to that.
So before we even submit any type of formal documents, and Jeff went over this towards the end of schematic design, that's part of the sit-down meeting where, without anything in front of you yet, this is what, we just want to get in front of you, understand the process, understand any hot button issues that you need us to address so it can prepare us properly for those applications.
The date is September 9th, sorry.
Is that pet friendly?
Oh, absolutely.
Just think
She's
about
not
it.
She's pretty good.
Antonia, who is not here tonight, but was part of our interview, has pet pigs that she.
Pet pigs? Oh, okay.
We were arguing a master plan in Southfield, and she brought them to the fair. It actually got a lot of people over to our booth, so it worked. Yeah.
All right.
But, so if.
The North End Hogs.
Yeah, right.
We haven't picked a mascot yet.
If there's a need, or a desire for us to give periodic updates, that's why I put those bullets down the bottom. We're happy to just,
Yeah, I think the
you know.
more of those we can do.
Yep.
The chairman of the town council has asked me to come every month and do an update at their monthly meeting. And that's the second Tuesday of every month. And it's just, sit at the table and kind of fill them in on where we're at. So we may very well pull, a few members of your group in on those. And so here's where we're at. I think they want to stay in the know. They've been very good about saying this group makes the decisions, but we just want to make sure that we're fully aware of what's happening.
Absolutely. So as we discuss this further with the superintendent as far as the workshops for each community, we'll plug in dates and be a little bit more specific. So this is kind of a living document, if you will. We'll add the detail as we go, but I think it's a good roadmap. So design development, jumping kind of back into the middle of the page, that's basically where you define every space and everything on the site. So there's a lot of, you basically want to define the scope in that design development set. So there's a lot of detailed meetings that'll occur. I didn't list everybody in there, but obviously facilities, we want to meet with police, fire, all of those various different representatives. Those contacts are kind of in this detailed list, but just try to keep this as clean as we can here. But towards the tail end of the design development, we always think it's appropriate to have kind of what we call a page turn, again, just with the building. So building, fire, health are all gonna have to, it's just a safe process, sign on the title page, and that makes them nervous at them. So we like to make sure that they're fully aware of the project, fully comfortable with the code interpretations, all that kind of stuff, early on, so that when we ask them at the end for PCR completion to sign off, it's a little bit smoother. So.
Yeah, so it's the cover sheet of the drawings, the list of drawings, cover sheet of the project manual, table of contents, and also a letter from the fire marshal acknowledging or accepting the no parking fire lane on the site plan. So all of these are requirements that are lessons learned on the part of the state where, things get added late in construction by authorities having jurisdiction sometimes. So they've tried to build in a lot of this front end review. So it's the equivalent of a permit application before we even go out to bid. And we've had some districts that issue a permit, a building permit from that review. That's how detailed the review is. So that's all part of the setting of the expectations in that first meeting. Just this is the path that we're on. This is when we're going to need to get back in front of you.
And then construction documents, as I mentioned, heads down and basically producing all the details, defining the scope. There's these yellow boxes that I kind of skipped over, which are always fun, which they're called estimate reconciliation. So once you get a CMR on board, we have an estimator. They're going to do an estimate. We're going to do an estimate. We're going to say, hey, it's this. They're going to say it's this. So there's probably a 4 or 5 week period. I tried to identify it, obviously at the end of each of these phases, but it's a 4 to 5 week period where you, it's called that estimate reconciliation, and then we bring the reconciled estimate as to this group as a whole, the OPM, the CMR, and the architect to say, okay, here's where we are. Here's, either we're on, over, under, whatever it may be. So expect some, decent meetings in those So in a nutshell, that's
Is
the,
there a VE phase?
That's part of the.
that's really
That's
part of.
within the L?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Value management, no, it's not value engineering.
I never was.
So that's part, Chris, to your point, that's part of the reconciliation process, is that we don't necessarily come to you guys saying, we have a problem, or we don't have a problem. We come with, okay, if we're modestly over budget, or if there's a budget issue, these are the strategies for getting back on budget, whether it's project alternates, value management. You guys become part of the decision-making process in any value management acceptance.
This schedule and the original schedule that we had are a little bit different. And I just want to make sure, the original schedule had us going out to bid in June 2024. So this schedule would have us not going out to bid until October or November.
I was looking at your Excel spreadsheet, it said September, October. But maybe I,
Had us starting construction.
all right, I
In October.
will, we'll get that.
I just want to make sure that we can get the building open.
Yeah, if that
Okay.
conclusion
This is-
doesn't align with.
This is the original schedule, but I mean, that was a very rough schedule done before we even went out to bid, but it is
think
based
that-
on the assumption that we will have those buildings open for September 2025.
Yeah. There was a schedule in there.
Should be the same schedule that I'm looking at here.
Yeah, except, when we talked about it, we took the schedule off of our website, so go back and find it if you want me to try and pull it up.
Well, you
No,
want
that-
to just put this up? It's-
Yeah, if, I think we downloaded it from the Google Doc that you sent during the RFP. I can adjust the schedule. We'll meet the schedule.
Well, that should be the same
regardless.
as what I have here, so, as I said, this showed the bidding process starting in mid-June, completed at the end of August, it's construction starting beginning of October, running through.
I don't know. That's all right. You wanna, regardless, let me confirm that and I'll adjust the schedule. Yeah.
I mean, the key is for us, I think, is that we really want to try very hard to get these buildings ready to occupy for September 2025.
Yep.
26. 2026.
26, right.
26.
All right, guess early.
Unless you could do it by 2025.
Right.
That
You're
works.
making me nervous with the.
It's a year, one way or the
I don't
other.
wanna say anything.
2026.
Well, I can tell you.
And this one had some, space at the end, they were looking essentially at being done in, doing punch lists and stuff.
Sure.
In May, and we hadn't all summer. But I just want to make sure as we're doing our scheduling,
Yeah,
that we are keeping that end date in mind.
absolutely, yeah. If that's.
There's
the-
a schedule that's in the working documents folder that they're probably looking at, that has bidding all the way through September 2024.
Right.
Construction of both schools, substantial completion, 16 months starting in October 2024.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, so it's the same
one I'm
thing
looking
they
at
said.
here.
That one's a little different.
I think that's different. It's
Yeah,
titled
that's-
Initial Rough Draft Macro Schedule, and it lines up with what you have, so.
I don't, whatever one's the latest I can match, but that's the one I matched, because that's the one we had access to.
We want to move in on September 2026?
No, you're moving before
No,
that.
you're moving in like July.
I mean, students
Yeah,
are,
we want it ready for occupancy.
Yeah.
For the beginning of the school year, that's what I meant to say, yeah.
Yeah, so
And we-
the
and
one
we-
on the screen is the one.
That's the one that they're looking at, because it's bidding right there, all the way to
Yeah,
September.
that's the one I've got here, it's the same thing.
Yeah, these are a couple months off.
Yep. We'll tweak it to align with this. Is this what you gave to OPMs and CMOs as well?
We didn't, I don't think we issued it to anybody.
We told them the school has to be open for school year 26.
Okay, all right.
I can send this to you though, Jeff.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be helpful. I'll back up our end date, so at least it aligns with this, and then once you get the rest of the folks on board, we'll refine it.
Great.
But, yeah, we'll find those.
And we understand that, we want occupancy, but things like demolition of the old Norton School,
Yeah,
and the
that'll
field, all that's
Yeah.
gonna happen afterwards. but-
Yep. Okay, so we touched on this briefly. These are drafts, obviously, but for each of the schools. For your community workshops. So again, consider them drafts. So we have one set for each school. It kind of describes a little bit as to what the expectation would be at these workshops. And then it's really just a draft template to start populating as we liquid dates. And then if we want to say something different, in the verbiage, just let us know and we'll define it.
So as Jeff had said earlier, we probably want
Yeah.
joint meetings until we get to probably a certain point where
These are for the community, like
Oh,
these
they
would
are.
be out the public workshops.
Oh, all right.
So what we tried to do is, workshop 1 is halfway through schematics, workshop 2 is once we really have defined the school, and then workshop 3 is essentially, we're wrapping up the documents, and here's the schedule to look at. So if we want to change it, modify it, open to it all, but that usually works pretty well. For just keeping the general public involved and engaged. Any questions on that one? Sorry, a lot of paper. I guess if you want just digital, we can do that too. It's up to you.
I think for this first one, it's nice to have something in front of us.
Yep.
As we go along to the dairy paper.
Do you have anything to add on those schools? So going back to our original agenda that we handed out, I knew we had a lot of content to cover there with the schedule and the process. Let's skip item 3 for a minute. We already discussed the site due diligence and confirmation, so I think we're there. And then we would like to, if possible, schedule some tours of the existing schools, just to try to understand, a little bit more about culture and,
Yeah, you maybe just reach out and square it away.
Yeah, so that's on our to-do list to follow up with you on that. And
When you say about school, all the schools?
I think whatever schools would be effective. I think
All
would-
4 elementary,
yeah.
5 elementary schools.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to try to.
We could hit it with a day.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
could take you around all the buildings there, and probably.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Probably want to see part of it.
Yeah. So we talked about that. We will, we have reviewed the ed spec, but we'll give you kind of, we're familiar with who wrote, the ed spec and
Yeah.
some of the, as we've used it in some of our projects, what, challenges might come up that we might flag early for you. So we'll give you some markups on that, and then we can communicate and talk
Great.
about it.
Yeah, we, subsequent to that draft, 2 years ago, at this point, we've had some things that evolved, and different thoughts as well, so it'd be great to discuss that.
Okay. And I'm sure once an OPM comes on board, they'll tell you, but we get one shot at going back, revising the ed spec. So what you typically do is revise it, or at least that's how it used to be. They've changed it on Madison, I don't know how, but, so we can track all those changes and then we go get it revised, we get it, once we're finalizing the ed spec, it could be at the end of DD, we get DOE state with the, I think it's EDO.
I guess I'm on the list.
So, that's how it used to be, I haven't shot at it, I'm not sure how other
New
communities.
leadership.
Yeah, but,
Jeff, at what point in the schedule do we, as a committee, start dealing with things like security, energy issues, stuff like that?
so I think it'll likely, so what we'll do, and it's on our to-do list on the bottom, is once we confirm these working group sessions with the staff, we're gonna marry up those topics with your building meetings, so that what we'd like to do is, in a similar fashion, say, okay, you're meeting on, because you already have your full year calendar, you're meeting on, whatever, 2 months from now, we'd like to talk about X, Y, and Z. So it'd be security, sustainability. So once we validate that with the superintendent, we'll map out the topics for your building committee meetings so that you know what to talk about. So the only piece that we didn't cover in our agenda was kind of like the number 3, and I wasn't quite sure if you wanted to spend time on it, but it'd be great to hear any kind of initial feedback that you had for us, or from your site visits, or if you had a vision, a goal, something that's important to you that you want to hear our entire team to hear, then if you want to take the time to just kind of quickly review that, that'd be helpful to us.
I'll take one.
1997, I opened a school.
My way.
That's 25 years ago. And if I go through it today, it still looks really new. It still looks like it's held up well. I'd like to, I probably won't be around 25 years from now, but I'd like to know that whatever we build here, that it's going to be something that people look at 25 years from now and say, it's held up well, it fits in nicely with the community. I've known some buildings that are done that have that oh wow factor when they're new, and you look at them 10 years later, it's like, what were they thinking? So I know from my point of view, that's a piece of it. I also spent most of my career as an elementary principal, and I want a building that is comfortable for elementary age kids. As we did some of the site visits, there were some buildings, some spaces that you walk through and said, wow, I could see being a 6, 7, 8-year-old in this school. And there were some that you walked through and said, it's not kid size, it's not, it's big and blank and open, and, I wouldn't feel like this is a warm, supportive environment. So, I want something that the children will feel that this is a safe, wonderful place to be.
But they want to come to school. Bridge and
Bridge in a boat, is that what
Bridge
you're
and a
saying?
boat. Well, we know where there's one of those.
Right, right.
Yes. Okay, that's good.
I think that whole idea, especially the Northland, the North School, like the fact that there are these wetlands there, and you talked about it, and another firm talked about it, like really revitalizing that, and even maybe even having, nature walk, nature trails, outdoor classrooms, a boardwalk through. That really spoke to me. Just that whole outdoors element, bringing, because I think that that's so tore into kids now. That's really how kids need to move, kids need to touch, So having all of those tactile, even like some of the furniture that we saw in these schools was so different from when all of us went to school. Things that kids could climb on, that really was, that was great to see, because I know my daughter, she's before I left, she's trying to build a staircase out of pillows to climb up to the top of the couch, right? You know, like that's how they, and then she learned like, oh, if I do that, I slide off. She was frustrated, but like that's how they learn. So seeing all those things was really eye-opening for me.
I would just say, excuse me, on the technology front, the flexibility to grow as technology changes. Because we don't know where it's gonna be 10 years from now. Enough flexibility that we can make relatively easy modifications. You have turns where whole walls have to be LED screens or something.
And that could even be some of the educational spaces. You know, that you look and, you know, we may have for second grades, for third grade, you know. One of the things I liked about Brookfield is that there was a thought of, well, 1 year I may not have four, I may have five. What happens?
Flexibility,
Yeah, what happens if we need a space where we're pulling multiple groups of kids together? So there's some flexibility to the design as times change.
For me, I'm gonna tell you what I don't wanna see, if possible.
Children.
Well, no, I care less, that's not up to me, that's fine. I don't wanna see, and I'm sure the folks at Colaronan they won't say anything, but they're gonna share my sentiment. We see plans come in, and we know it's gonna be budget conscious, and we see this, I don't know, for example, a big giant cantilevered spaceship looking carport that you know everybody's gonna spend a lot of time on, and it's the first thing that's gonna get chopped off because you're gonna be over budget. And if we could just not put opulence in for opulence sake, you know, to win the architecture award, which I hope you win a lot, but let's be budget conscious before we put something that's over the top, you know, and it really doesn't serve the users or the kids in any tremendous way. You know what I'm saying? We want something that's nice and beautiful and fantastic, we're proud of, but it doesn't have to be this over the top, you know, once in a world type of thing that we know the budget isn't gonna support, and we know it's gonna get chopped right out, and all we're doing is wasting our time on it.
Sure. Sensible approach to design. Yep. Got it.
Yeah, given we're doing two buildings, I think each of them should have their own personality. And not be just a copy and paste.
Well, I think one of the things that we loved about your presentation was the way that you looked at the town and the different aspects of the town. And you looked at, you know, things like Rock 12 and, you know, the farms up in the north end, and possibly tying that to the buildings themselves. And I agree, you know, the spaces inside and stuff should be very similar, but you should have a different feel for each school.
And I am not against
Yeah, whatever you want.
by any means. I hope you didn't think I was.
So, I mean, I know you guys realize, we have to maintain whatever you design and build. Please don't give us any enclosed courtyards that we can't access. We have 3 schools with enclosed courtyards, and they're difficult to maintain, and therefore they don't really get used all that much. So figure out another way to get light. I understand there's a reason, you know, to have a courtyard. At least give us an access way, so give us a view, but not enclosed. That's my only request.
CHS.
Doolittle.
Doolittle. As far as he wasn't counting CHS now.
Well, yeah, CHS, at least we can access it. I'm not crazy about it, but we can get to it. But yeah, I'd rather avoid that, because it just becomes difficult to maintain.
And there's a sound issue, particularly at the elementary level. And it's a distraction issue.
But I think the overall maintenance issue is always a big one.
Yeah.
And again, you come back to that idea of, you know, 25 years from now, we wanted to look at, well, we want materials that'll hold up well. We want things like heating systems and stuff that won't be so difficult to maintain and operate that, you know, you end up ripping them out 6 months from now, but.
Yep. You guys hear that?
Same holds,
Yeah, don't go with the cheese.
same holds true for any boardwalks, you know. Make them really durable and really long-lasting. I mean, I love the idea, you know. But avoid pressure-treated lumber that, unless it's gonna hold up 50 years. That's, by the way, how long we expect the school to last.
But even exterior plantings and things like that, as much as possible, if you can make those things more natural and not require a lot of maintenance. We don't have people that are gonna go through and, you know, clean out weeds from gardens and things like that. You know, it's-
I'm looking at Will because we've had discussions with, where rather pointedly, we've been told, my guys know how to do one thing, and that's mow grass. So, you know, we're not landscapers, we're maintenance people, so we're comfortable with those type of discussions.
I mean, there's a balance that you have to strike. You want it to be nice, and our guys could do more than mow, but we don't have a team of gardeners on the other hand either, right? So it's gotta be, you know, relatively easy to maintain.
Sure.
I'd say schools that like really embrace the landscape that they're on, so they're obviously two very different, and that's what was nice about the presentation, but you gotta look like the schools fit there. So especially on the north end when it's just a field, you don't want it to look like a school in the middle of the field. You just want it to look like a school there. And then the other big thing for me too is, you know, obviously making the spaces inside, you know, is uniform, so there's not like the nice school and, you know, the school that was behind there. But, you know, half the town is gonna have kids that would go to these schools and it's only for 6 years. So really kind of thinking about how like the community is still gonna use the school space, like even after they don't go to school there, they don't have kids there. Like, you know, the gyms and everything like that, kind of making those spaces functional for people using them as, you know, rec leagues and everything else. So.
And being able to secure the rest of the building. So
Yeah, that's a big part.
Let community groups in without getting all through the school system, through the school building.
I think we were sensitive to that, and you had specs as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of security things that we'll talk about down the line.
Absolutely.
But being able to lock off areas and that sort of thing, so.
Is there any plan to reach out to, say, the abutters, or if that's part of one of your community sessions or whatever, to talk about, hey, we're gonna be doing this, and here's how it won't affect you. I live, with the leaves off the trees, I can see North End property from my house, and I drive by there all the time, and there's that one house, and I just keep thinking, and it's a nice looking property, you take care of it, it looks nice, and I keep thinking, if I was living there and I wasn't part of this committee, I'd be like, what's going on, what's going on?
Yeah, we've already been having conversations around that.
And we've held focus meetings with neighbor groups in other districts where, you know, especially on a green field, right? These folks bought property next to an open space. So that is probably going to be the critical group that is going to be interested in it. So I think we can gauge it from the first public forum as we get closer, especially prior to the land use approvals where the abutters are going to be notified anyway. You'd rather have those, hear those concerns before it's in a public hearing, right? So.
Yeah, so in the north end, there's one home that's really right at the property, and we've had conversations with them. At Norton property, Sean, the town manager, and I have met with the neighbors already. So there has been engagement, and that we want to honor a commitment to be a good neighbor, and, you know, certainly intend on engaging them in the process, and, you know, they'll certainly be well aware of events as they occur.
So they're not only gonna wanna know, you know, what impact the building is going to have from, you know, a land perspective, like in my backyard, what I'm gonna be able to see there, I wanna know what's my traffic gonna be like, you know, pick up and drop off, you know, what's the construction cycle going to be, you know, hours of operation, that type of stuff. those are all those conversations.
I think that's particularly true in Norton, since it's all surrounded by homes.
Yeah.
The north end is a little more open.
Are we doing a traffic study for Norton?
We did not do one initially.
Well,
Yes.
during construction and after construction? Because there will be construction traffic that doesn't go through the normal path.
Well, that'll be part of what we explained to the neighbors in the Norton community, was that at the very least, we need to have access to Sharon Drive behind. That was a non-negotiable from emergency services. Whether or not, I mean, there's been discussion of that being used as a bus exit only, but that's, to be determined. Nothing has been finalized on that, and we will meet with, as we review the site and get feedback from the community about how do we utilize that, whether it's emergency vehicle entrance only or buses only or some combination. We have to have at the very least emergency, and they know that, and they're ready to engage in that conversation when.
Yeah, I'm thinking more about what we're constructing.
Well, the construction vehicles will be entering there, they know that as well, because we have to, basically sequester off the existing building, and that will be the only way in and out for those construction vehicles.
Right, but we might need to limit when they can use.
Oh, yeah, that, all the construction
And-
stuff,
and that's
when
part
that
of-
happens. Go ahead, sorry.
That's part of a conversation with CMR, right? Because they can build into their bid packages, no deliveries between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning and 2 and 3 in the afternoon, whenever your bell times are. And in particular, I'm thinking about a project that's recently finished up where the construction manager built into the bid packages second shift work because it was an occupied school. So what they were finding is that even though the workday didn't start until 3:30, people were idling, waiting out, in the parking lot, waiting to go in. So making sure that that's part of a managed bid process so that you're buying those times as well with your subcontractors. That's probably a good question to ask in your interviews about site logistics and how they can work on an occupied site, how they would manage it.
Thanks. Any other suggestions for us about construction manager question?
No, I mean, I think it's similar to some of the questions you asked us. I think it's the team assigned, I think is so critically important. And how their proposed team works with the other two critical parties, the OP and the architect. And we've had very good relationships with CMRs, and I think it has to be a mindset going into it that it's a team effort to achieve these projects and for them to be successful. And I think you can learn a lot by those people that are assigned and the work that they've done in the past and the relationships that they've built in the past or not. So, but yeah, I think I saw they're all pretty well qualified firms. So thank you for kind of sharing some of the vision pieces and what your expectations are. So do you have anything else that we missed? Anybody from our team?
One thing I would like to bring up is long lead items. That's a break of construction schedules. One of the things you may want to talk about is how they'll get the shop drawings in early, get the approval process. I mean, we're still looking at, for example, generators, 52 weeks out. It's trending better. I mean, I have a project, they ordered the generator January 22, supposed to get here in May, hopefully. So those kind of items we have to be sensitive to, because initially when that started to happen, that was blowing up construction, and then you're put into a point where you might be pressured to accept what they can get. That's not what you wanted. But if you want them to schedule and have the building open in time. So how are they gonna handle that? What's their plan for getting that done up front? A simple meter pan, basic piece of equipment. I had this conversation this morning with Eversource, and it's 50 weeks for a meter pan that we have on the side of our house. It's a piece of metal with some copper in it. I don't understand the delay. So it's, you'd be surprised what's delaying things. And that causes problems down the road, so just.
And we've run into that here in town, on the public building commission. We've gone out to bid a couple of times for projects with air conditioners for the high school, regenerative units, things like that. It's months and months beyond what, we want to do all the work over the summer, and we can't seem to get that stuff in on time.
Yeah, exactly.
I know
Is there a
we talked-
list of items that we should be sensitive about? Like, how do we know which items are gonna have an extra long lead time?
That might be one of the things I'd recommend we discuss up front for types of systems you would prefer. I've looked at the ed spec, there's some things I need clarified. In the ed spec, there seems to be some conflicts in requirements. So pending which way we work that out, then we can itemize it a little better.
The one thing that I would also say is we'll wanna lean on the construction manager that's getting daily feedback. We went out for early procurement on a recent project for ductile iron piping, roofing. At the time, those were the hot items. They're not as hot anymore, right? So I guess the only point that I bring that up is if we're bidding in the summer of 2024 or late summer, early fall of 2024, those materials may be vastly different than they are today. So just making sure that we're monitoring that through design.
Yeah, I mean, I think you asked about the CMR, so one of the pieces I would ask is will they be at the table when we are having those conversations about different building systems? Because they'll know, the subcontractor pool, if they're capable of doing that. And it's not just building systems, it could be structural systems, right? We're gonna talk about that as well, but asking them to make sure that they're gonna interact with us so that we're drawing something that, we're gonna get, people to build. And there's materials there, so it's not just materials, it's a labor pool. I think we welcome that feedback, we have no egos, we wanna hear from them what they are seeing so that we can get a better value. So that would be great to have them engaged, for those conversations.
Well, if you think of anything else, let us know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Those are a few weeks down the line before we go those interviews.
Sure.
Whatever information you can give us, we appreciate it.
Does anybody have any?
For our team?
Sorry? Has he got the?
Is that the score of the game?
Throwing it up.
Plus,
Extra
listening
that,
out in your ears.
I do have the contract, I modified that date, but if you want to resend it.
Yeah, I'll send you a new page tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Okay. So I'll mail them to you or? to-
That's fine, sure.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I'll get Sean to sign it and send you back a full original. Did he tell you to send me two?
Yeah, I brought two of each, yeah,
Great.
but, okay. Great. So
Well,
we'll take
this
care
was
of
very
that.
valuable. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Thank you, excited.
We won't expect the whole team here every single time, but I think it is very valuable. It's exciting that we're finally
Yeah,
on the move here.
ready to go. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, number 8 on our agenda was the CM RFQ review. You've got the booklets. Little fun reading again. Over the next week. So please take a look at those. There are 5. So once again, we're looking to determine 1 to 4 for companies, firms to approve.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
At least one.
Yeah, great.
Well,
I have a question about the booklets.
yes, ma'am.
How should I get them?
We can drop them off at the house tomorrow, if that's all right.
I know you're not.
I mean, that would be incredible.
I can drop
We do make house calls.
Yeah, I can drop them off. I'll
You
take
know,
care
Cheshire Public Schools going above and beyond.
of it.
Do we have your address?
Yeah.
Somewhere. Yeah, with the whole list of
I mean, I'm also happy to, like, if they were at a, I don't wanna get anyone sick, so I don't wanna come into an office to get them.
No, it's not.
We don't want you to come into an office to get them either, so the feeling's mutual, and we'll make sure you get them.
It's lovely talking with other educators because everyone understands the seriousness of the illness.
No, I'll be glad to drop them off, Sarah. It's only 5 minutes from my house. Not a big deal.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
He'll slow down before he throws them across the front lawn.
There we go.
Terrible people with that kid.
Any other items? I changed number 9, so it doesn't just say new business, but it says items for future agendas. Since we should be throwing in any discussion on substantive issues, but is there anything you want on a future agenda?
One thing we need, well, we'd probably end up considering, they're doing 2 schools, as we ramp up meetings, we're gonna have to double up. Cause I can't see them doing a presentation of a school and us being away to wait for the second one.
So we meet every week?
Might very well.
We
Sure,
might
sure,
very well
sure.
end up. Yeah. We'll see,
Yeah.
as it comes. There was a proposal way back when that we go to every Thursday meetings, and we've just done a bunch of special meetings in between.
Yeah, we probably don't need that during schematic design, but as design development ramps up, we
We may very well need to, and I'd rather have, personally, I'd rather have more shorter meetings.
Yep, agree.
than,
You're here.
you know,
No doubt.
than 4 or 5 minute hour meetings, so. You're right, we lose that focus after about 9 o'clock. Anything else? If not, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Chris? Seconded?
second.
Dennis? Any conversation?
Yeah,
All those in favor? It is unanimous. We are adjourned.